ever get tired of watching the old-timey wrestling at the beginning of it? Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, here for a special Sunday live episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for taking the time to check us out. If you do enjoy what we're doing, please hit like and subscribe. It's a passive gesture that goes a long way in promoting the channel. If you are a returning listener, subscriber, or one of the very valued patrons, so glad to have you back. I want to thank everyone that tuned in for a great week of shows, and especially yesterday, where I had the dates all confused. We did a special live stream. Very interactive. Please go back and check that out if you haven't already. It's called We're Gonna Party Like It's 1999? With a question mark. We did start this week of shows discussing the history of anti-globalization protests, 1999. Then we talked about why men are lacking platonic male friendships on Wednesday. And Thursday, we welcome Doom Scroll podcast host Joshua Citarella to discuss the mimetic history of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Again, those shows are up now. If you're watching on YouTube, there is a playlist that we have for all of our main shows. If you do appreciate the programming here on TIR and want to be a part of our movie nights and champagne rooms, become a patron or a paid YouTube subscriber for as little as $3 a month or a one-time payment of $30 for the year. You can have access to champagne rooms past and present, join us for movie night watch parties, and much, much more. Now, let's get to why you people are here in the first place. What the hell happened to pop music? In Mark Fisher's theory of hauntology, he argues that the future has fallen victim to the corrosive cancel culture of capitalism, that the socio-cultural progress once promised by the architects of the 20th century Enlightenment never truly materialized. Instead, we're haunted by the ghosts of those lost futures, trapped in a cultural landscape where we are dominated by a haze of cultural nostalgia. Fisher understood that we endlessly recycle past styles and aesthetics, creating a kind of cultural flatness. This repetition gives rise to that haunting effect Fisher described, the persistent echo of the past and present. In our guest Sam Jennings' latest piece for Unheard magazine, The End of Poptimism, he explores something we've talked about on this show many times, the willingness, even eagerness, of today's celebrities to sell out. There's no elite capture of the modern pop icon. It's baked directly into the business model, whether it's Madonna or Lady Gaga. And isn't Gaga just a derivative of Madonna? The point isn't to pass judgment on what you listen to. It's to reflect on what Fisher might have called the death of cool. The abrasive, boundary-pushing artists who once chased innovation have largely been replaced by a culture that accepts pop music as just another corporate widget. These contemporary stars aren't just making products, they are the products. As Sam writes, quote, "This is the strange legacy of the last days of poptimism. What began as a rejection of previous standards of cool has left us with decades of empty pop music, uncritical critics, and fandoms deeply resentful of anyone who dares suggest that their idols aren't brilliant simply because they're massively wealthy and successful," unquote. Today on TIR, we're diving into this theory of poptimism, what it says about the state of music, creativity, and cultural resistance moving forward. Please welcome, coming all the way live from the United Kingdom, journalist Sam Jennings.
What's up, Jason?
Sam, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And so sorry about the mix-up from yesterday.
No, I mean, like I got back from dinner and got some emails, and I was like, oh no, I totally screwed that up. And then I checked and I was like, okay, wait, no, we're good.
You're like, wait a minute, he screwed it up.
Yeah, no, I mean, whatever, man. But no, I'm glad I'm here. Thanks for having me on.
I saw your piece because a friend of mine who also lives in the UK, Bram Gieben, who works for Revol Press, one of the publishers there, had shared your article and said it was brilliant. So if Bram says something is brilliant, then I'm going to check it out.
I'll take it, yeah.
Right. the good old days of your friend referring you something.
You know, it's like that these days, especially Substack, because you reached out to me on Substack.
I reached out to you on Substack.
It
So
feels like that sometimes.
he shared it on Substack. I read the piece, and I was like, all right, I'm in. Let's try to have Sam on the show. I reached out to you, and you got back to me. So thank you for that. I did enjoy the piece because I do kind of like these deeper Fisher-like looks into pop music. So let's start with the basics for those unfamiliar. How would you define poptimism?
Man, well, you're kicking it off already with Fisher and Derrida hauntology. That's we'll have to come back to that because I do find the Fisher thing very interesting, and I literally had to stop reading like halfway through that enormous, volume of K-punk essays just because it was so depressing. He's a brilliant guy. Fisher was awesome. But I was just like, oh my gosh, if you know anything about Fisher, of course it was depressing,
Yeah.
But defining poptimism, I think it's purposefully vague. I think it's always been vague. I think it's always been a vibe. Some people say it floated around in the 80s. Some people credit Simon Reynolds with it in the 80s. I haven't been able to find that actual, like, a reference to it in his 80s stuff. But obviously the big thing that comes up is 2004. There's this big Kalefasana New Yorker article, right? Which doesn't give birth to the idea of poptimism, but it frames it opposite to what he's calling rockism, right? Which in 2004, you have this disastrous SNL performance where Ashley Simpson is, she's the younger sister of the reality TV star Jessica Simpson. She's about to launch her pop career. She's released a record. She's performing on SNL. And something I haven't
Her
watched
backing
in a while,
track. I actually remember that very, very, very vividly.
It was a scandal. It was like Milli Vanilli repeated, right?
But okay, so I don't know how much you know about Milli Vanilli, and this is why it all is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I'll be extremely brief.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Milli Vanilli is discovered in Germany by a man named Frank Farian.
No way. Okay.
For a lot of people that don't know this, Frank Farian was a music artist and producer. Frank Farian loved soul music, and he was told that he would never be able to make a soul record because he's white. Right? We break up music by racialized categories to this day. It's 2025. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So Frank Farian says, I'm going to make a record. I don't care what you say. He makes a record. No one listens to it. And everyone points a finger at him and says, I told you so. And he goes, you know what? I'll show you. So he makes another record, but this time he pitches his voice down just a little bit for the male parts. He pitches his voice up for the female parts. That record is Daddy Cool by Boney M. So he sang all the parts. He got a guy to lip sync the male parts. He actually got female singers to sing the female parts, and they would perform live for years. Boney M has tons of hits. Not so familiar with the U.S. audience. Maybe older people know.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name before.
Ask an older contemporary in the UK. They will be like, oh, everybody knows Boney M, Daddy Cool. So he has this huge hit. Eventually, the guy that lip syncs says, I want to sing. Frank Farian says, no, you can't sing. The rest is history. Milli Vanilli's big hit, Don't You Know It's True, was a single, a dance single in Baltimore, Maryland, in I believe 1986. Frank Farian got his hands on it. He really liked it. Brought the group in to record it. Or no, he played everything. There was a rap part in it. He brought the rapper in, but he wanted better looking singers. He ends up finding Milli Vanilli was a group. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but they were actually a group. They made their own original music. And Frank Farian signed them to a deal. And they thought they were going to record these songs. They were under the impression that they were going to sing the songs that Frank had played them. They signed the deal. They got an advance. They spent the advance. They were ordered back to the studio for a photo shoot. They're like, well, when do we get to sing? And he's like, there's no singing. The songs are recorded. You're gonna mime them. They said no. He said, give me back my money then.
Mm.
They, of course, didn't have it. The rest is
Yeah.
history. But Milli Vanilli, the year that they hit,
Mhm.
1990,
90 or 91, yeah.
1991, 3 other number 1 singles on the dance charts
Yeah.
were also fake groups.
Mm.
And I say all that to say,
Mhm.
Ashley Simpson actually did sing the song.
Mhm.
She
Yeah.
just didn't sing it live.
She's lip syncing to herself. Yeah.
She's lip syncing to herself. But lip syncing artists, people not playing the instruments on the record, this goes back to the history kind of recorded music, of
Oh,
people
yeah.
getting credited for things that they did or didn't do.
Of course.
And it's always fascinating to me when it becomes a scandal. And the
Mhm.
Ashley Simpson thing was a scandal. But if you go back about 20 years, right around the time Milli Vanilli got caught with they were performing live on a
Yeah.
tour and it
Yeah.
looped. That same month, the same thing happened to Janet Jackson, where she was performing
I
on
didn't
her
know that.
Rhythm Nation tour, and a loop thing happened. But we all know Janet Jackson sings the songs, blah, blah, blah.
Of course, yeah.
But it's funny how these things kind of work in these weird cycles where if
Yeah.
you choose to pick on somebody, and Ashley Simpson was the person to pick on, because here you have the sister of a star. Something similar was happening to Britney Spears. Her
Yeah.
younger sister was kind of a budding
That's right.
Disney
I
star
forgot
as
about
well.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
So as people are getting tired of seeing this weird nepotism,
Mhm.
and if you've watched the footage of Ashley Simpson, it's funny because when it skips, she just does this silly dance.
I remember that. I remember that part. Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
it cuts out.
And then she just bolt off stage.
Yeah, she just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's wild.
So that was an interesting time, and I don't think we've ever really asked critical questions about what we believe authenticity to be,
Yeah.
and do we care? Because ultimately, with Milli Vanilli, the actual people that sang the song did release music. Milli Vanilli did release music that they actually sang. Neither one of those things really sold well. And you kind of have to ask yourself, maybe people really do like the whole package of the dancing mime and maybe
Yeah.
these real
I think
singers.
people do like that. I don't know. I recently did kind of a big obsessive tour of Billboard top 40s, just like trying to really get down to it. I was kind of dumb. I was like, can I pinpoint a year going from like 1958 was when Billboard started
Mhm.
its chart. Can I pinpoint a year where I mean, admittedly, this is my taste, but
Mhm.
in the balance between schlock or kitsch or whatever,
Mhm.
the kind of stuff that hasn't really lasted, like even the one hit wonders that didn't really last, versus the kind of music, pop songs that got onto the top 40 that I think have some holding power or staying power and really would be still known by some number of people today. It really seemed like it was about 79, 80. Things started to definitively kind of, I think MTV might have changed some of that. The balance started shifting away in the 60s, from 65 to 69 especially. You have just like maybe 30 out of 40 songs would be familiar to somebody who has kind of a general pop culture awareness of
Mhm.
that time. And that stays pretty true, I think, through the 70s. I think it starts to change in the 80s, and then it's just almost a direct downslope, to the point that I'm kind of losing my thread. But I think what was starting to change at that time, obviously Milli Vanilli at this point feels like it's almost like the last salvo of an old kind of kitsch, an old kind of pop. Because if they're coming out in 90 or 91, like Nevermind is just around the corner, right? Smells Like Teen Spirit is just about to happen. And Gen X is going to come and announce itself as like, we are a subculture obsessed generation that has taken over the idea of cool that the boomers kind of molded into a pop culture idea. And we're going to take that and we're going to wield that as a medium or like a way of delineating taste. And you actually had, I think the crazy thing about the 90s is you have this interplay between an actual, number of subgenres and the music industry that is constantly trying to pick up and recycle and use those subgenres. And you see that a bit in the 80s. The classic example is probably Madonna, and I talk about that in the article briefly.
Yeah.
She's gay disco. She's coming out of that late 70s Studio 54, New York. Mm-hmm. And she's becoming the avatar of that as it goes even more electronic, as it goes even more like global. And it's not just this very queer, often very black subculture, right? She becomes this face for the whole thing. And I think it's that the big difference between something like a Milli Vanilli and an Ashley Simpson is in part the fact that by the 2000s, these subcultures are already starting, like the uptake of these subcultures being able to sustain their own sense of kind of creating a bubble for themselves to protect themselves against entrenchment from exploitative capital, from the kind of agents and industry people who are constantly coming through and trying to find the next big sound. Even I think by 2004, it's less and less the case that there's a movement from subculture to popularity at a mass level, right? Mm-hmm. You see it a few times in the 2000s. You see it with dubstep. You see it with EDM. You see it with, jungle a bit in the UK, and drum and bass and other things kind of crack their way into the pop mainstream vocabulary. You see it with a few other things, but the internet is going by 2004. Mm-hmm. Somebody like Khalifa Sana can write an article kind of ironically turning around and praising somebody like Ashley Simpson for being a product, like saying we should accept that a pop star is a product. It's a commercial venture. There's a lot of money behind it. There's a huge production value behind it. We should honor that and be excited about that, and not just rely on these old Gen X white guy cliches. I know that Gen X is like very complicated, but there's that, that image of the John Cusack high fidelity record store guy, right? who's like appointed himself as the sad middle-aged white guy who is the arbiter of taste, and his taste overwhelmingly leans towards the kind of bands that he thinks are real rock and roll, right? They kept the spirit of whether it's punk or 80s college rock and hardcore, or like the 90s indie stuff, that image, that like shibboleth is kind of in the minds of people at the dawn of Poptimism. They are saying, we're tired of that. It's old, it's revanchist, it's white, it's fuddy-duddy. It's these old white guys want to cling on to, their idea of what real music is.
We're the new white guys that are going to tell you what music is.
Well, and that's another part of it. Yeah.
That's my theory of grunge, by the way.
Oh yeah, tell me about
that. Yeah, that it's younger white guys that want their own boomer nostalgia. Ooh, and because those guys have a look that is so antithetical to what is popular, right? It's not leather pants and pointy guitars. It's kind of a throwback to the 60s. Neil Young and shit.
Oh yeah.
So, and it also enables them to not have to talk about rap like it's important.
Right.
So now you don't have to talk about black people you don't want to talk about, and you can have your own boomer nostalgia. So no, keep going. Yeah. I'm loving all this.
No, but the hip hop we're gonna have to get into too, because hip hop's the strangest. I think it's we can argue about at what point does hip hop become, street culture become global fashion, and at what point does hip hop somewhere in the 90s go from being a subculture that is cool and can be like appropriated by the white suburban kids or avoided by the grunge guys that you're talking about, or anybody, the rock critics. At what point does hip hop become the culture? At what point does it even become like the bedrock of most music? I was listening to Jagged Little Pill the other day just to be like, is it still pretty good? I think it's okay. It's got some good songs, but like the beats, the kind of stuff that they're doing, they are slowed down break beats, samples, electronic drums. And it's like, you hear that going throughout the 90s, even in a lot of the popular rock music or the pop music that was on the radio. And it's like, that's hip hop underneath.
Can I ask you this question? You are in, for me, the birthplace of my favorite genre of music, which people are going to call trip hop, right?
Oh,
it's this amazing mix of punk and hip hop, and just crazy 60s stuff. And it is, to me, it's one of the last original sounds that you're going to get.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Right.
Yeah. I think that and shoegaze are kind of the last two things that really
and they're both coming out of, to me, they're coming out of that area of the UK.
Yeah,
not the same area.
North England especially, Leeds, Manchester, to a degree Glasgow in Scotland, to a degree parts of Ireland. Yeah. London too.
When I think of I was thinking about hip hop today, and I was thinking of something that Les Claypool said in an interview that I watched recently. Les Claypool is from the Bay Area, where I'm from. And he came up with a lot of the metal guys. And one of the things that he said was, and I think this is a very important statement, he said the metal guys were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do because there was no template on what success looked like for that genre. So they could just make records, and there wasn't A&Rs over their heads going, no, slow that down. We need a hook here, blah, 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 blah. And hip hop, to me, in its quote unquote golden era, which is going to be, let's say, 88 to 96.
Sure.
Right. If you look at that era of music, there's a lot of technological innovation that's happening as far as like the ability to sample for longer periods of time. And also, you got guys that are taking music beyond quote unquote black music. De La Soul is sampling Steely Dan, and Hall & Oates, and creating something entirely new with it. And no one knows what a hit is. So there's no template, there's no formula. So you can have, like I was telling you off air, I worked on this kid's TV show. It was called Yo Gabba Gabba, and one of the people that was on there,
of course,
God rest his soul, is Biz Marquis, and being able to hang around Biz and pick his brain and have him share all these pictures of what rap looked like in this kind of heyday. And he had this picture. I talk about this on the show sometimes. It was him, Eazy-E, and Will Smith. And I'm like, oh, where was this? He goes, we were on tour.
Yeah,
because it was rap. He's like, it wasn't gangster, it wasn't this, it was just rap.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of freedom, your music is going to be interesting, and also for a lot of critics, because it's this new thing, and they're saying, well, this is the voice of the black culture, this is the voice of urban youth, blah 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 blah. That's a whole different discussion we can get into. And probably I would love to have my co-host Pascal Robert, who's older and from New York, who has a much more nuanced perspective of how hip hop does come out of kind of bourgeois disco culture. And not so much just like the quote unquote slums. But hip hop has a freedom in the 90s, and that freedom is infectious, and music has a certain freedom in the 90s, and it's kind of infectious. So when you talk about listening to even something like Jagged Little Pill with drum breaks on it, like there's a certain amount of freedom. And also we have to be honest, it's cheaper to have drum breaks in there.
It is.
Than a real
it really
drummer.
is.
And that's one of the advancements of the technology.
Yeah. I think you're right about all that, man. I still think hip hop is like, if we're like slowly getting towards a less than a vague definition of poptimism. I think hip hop is constantly going to be a weird exception, because it becomes the bedrock of pop music.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably it has been, I mean, up until very recently. There was a brief little blip, right? Like the first Obama era, I just think of just thud, 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 thud. We're never gonna die. Glitzy, party pop for like the absolute crash of the economy, you know. But pretty
Kesha, is that
quickly,
Kesha?
yeah, Kesha, LMFAO,
Yeah.
Gangnam Style, that sort of
Oh
stuff.
wow. Yeah.
But like pretty quickly, somewhere in the mid 2010s, trap becomes just that's the sound of pop music. Every, you know, a Halsey song is just trap, with somebody, you know, not doing the regular kind of rapping over it, but the bedrock for a while. It feels like it's kind of like a lot of it was trap. Just everything was trap for a while.
Yes.
And that was much more exciting than thud, thud, thud. No, we're never going to die. Party all day, you know. But hip hop does this kind of weaving in and out of: is it the popular style? Is it a subculture? Is it countercultural? Or is it now the dominant like voice? Like and all these, every black artist has to deal with the same thing, right? Like, by being a rapper, what does selling out mean? Well, it means a totally different thing in hip hop than it does to a white guy who has his Gen X boomer idea of cool and counterculture, right? But I think the big difference with the internet version of Poptimism and other older versions of that kind of, we love pop stars because they're rich and famous, and we think they're rich, you know, lives, their success, everything is like deserved because they're these beautiful special avatars of our aspirations. That's always been there. But I think that in the article I talk about that Khalif Hassan article from 2004, mostly because it's a really convenient point to say, like, okay, here's the point where we have like rhetoric forming that argues for kind of a dismissal of those old counterculture attitudes. There is no golden age of hip hop, right? In the poptimist view, it's, well, black artists finally got their bag and they have to navigate exploitation and they have to navigate all kinds of predatory white, you know, industry behavior. But I mean, shoot, by the time Timbaland and Pharrell are basically tag teaming the production behind like half the Billboard Top 100 in the early 2000s, at least it felt like it. And urban is become, you know, as a category is becoming more and more ridiculous. Like pop music just is that kind of hip hop, with whatever dress people want to put on top of it. Then, and this is the thing with Poptimism, I think that article and everything afterwards is able to use the argument that, well, what we're doing by praising these popular, successful artists and their status as commercial projects rather than, you know, the old idea of authenticity as like, you do what you do, fuck the man. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say the F word.
Yeah, you can say it. It's all
okay,
good.
Fuck the man, you know, I'm not going to sell out. The concept of selling out is already starting to be questioned. And part of that is that you can position the argument with, as Santa does, and as more and more people do, and I think this explodes in the 2010s. I think once Pitchfork gets bought out by Condé Nast in like 2015, they become like the perfect example of going from we are the record snobs, we hold fast to these old ideas of authenticity, to, oh no, actually we need to celebrate everybody. And it dovetails perfectly with, for lack of a better term, wokeness. You know, that thing we're gonna have a harder time defining that than we do optimism.
Yeah.
But you know, it comes with that climate of, we don't want anybody to feel bad. We're empowering people. We're going to make sure that we're uplifting these marginalized voices, which, you know, we know was mostly just a way to sell people things. It didn't Maybe it uplifted some very already famous voices, but the bottom line didn't get much better for most people. I think Poptimism is waning now, mostly because it's petered out the way that a lot of the rest of that rhetoric has. And what began, as I say in the article, what began as a sort of feel-good thing, we're not going to trash people anymore. We're not going to have these old fuddy-duddy ideas of authenticity. We're going to be comfortable with the fact that pop stars are commercial projects, and we're going to evaluate people according to their success, which is the same as saying, well, now that, you know, queer people, gay people, marginalized communities are seeing more representation in our pop culture, that is the argument for we're going to shut off the critical part of our brain. We're going to say, just let people enjoy things. We're going to create that kind of attitude, that climate that persisted for a while, especially online, of, well, we can't really think about these things. We can't say that one thing is better than another, because to do that would be to be going back to a retrogressive way of looking at the world. And, that was tried for a while. I think it was always inevitable that was going to happen. But I think we are really at the point where people are just tired of it. I think the Taylor Swift album proves that more than anything, the reaction to it being just kind of a big shrug from a lot of people, and then from the fans being like, wait, why do I care about the most successful person in history talking about how bad her life is and how frustrated she is?
She's had an interesting rise.
Very interesting.
In that, when I think of the female pop icon in the era in which I grew up, either you were a serious singer-songwriter, like Carole King, Joni Mitchell, or you're an extravagant star, Cher, Madonna.
Yeah.
And one of the things Madonna got to do, for better or for worse, is really experiment and play with taboos. And it felt like that's what she kind of got off on.
Yeah, totally. Like, she's good at it.
She definitely was a climber, right? She's definitely like a social climber.
Yeah.
And I don't think she hid it by any stretch of the imagination. But when she gets to a certain point of beyond the teen pop thing, beyond the fingerless gloves and the desperately seeking Susan, material girl stuff, and she kind of like during her marriage with Sean Penn, we sound like two gossip columnists right now, and I love every bit of it. So thank you so much, Sam. There's a song that she does, which I think is maybe one of her best songs in an amazingly large catalog. Live to Tell.
Which album is that on? Or was it a single?
It was for a movie that Sean Penn did with Christopher Walken. That's based on a true story, and I can't think of the name of the movie right now.
I'll have to look it up after.
And it's a great song. And then she, soon after, the marriage dissolves, and then she's going to get into the Truth or Dare kind of Vogue days and the sex book.
Yeah,
like just she does the Like a Prayer video where there's a black Jesus. Again, it's like what people social, crazy. Right? What social taboos can I mess with? What buttons can I push to start conversations that are going to sell records, et cetera, bring people out? And then on the flip side, you always had, teen idols. Yeah. But Madonna going from teen idol to adult, and you can say this something similar to Michael Jackson going from child star to adult.
Literally,
As they got older, their music matured, and they wanted to deal with more adult themes. Yeah. With the Taylor Swifts of the world, as she's getting older, when she's in her 30s now, isn't she? The music has stayed extremely juvenile.
I think so. Yeah.
And it's almost like even Miley Cyrus, for better or for worse, has used her personal ups and downs to further her career and makes more mature music for a woman of her age. And you hear Taylor Swift,
maybe, yeah.
it's like, man, you're going to be a kid forever.
Oh,
Eventually, your
yeah, it's the
fans are
high
going to.
school diary always, but that's what people love, right? Like,
Isn't it?
I
Tell
think
me. I don't know.
well, I think, you know, I think there it's one of the big things. I think it's interesting what you say to point out she achieved that status that used to be reserved for maybe boundary pushing icons, or really just like the kind of pop starlets that just like really got enormous. She did that as a confessional singer-songwriter. It's
Yes.
interesting to bring that up.
Yeah.
Which is that's an innovation in a way, right? But I think she created a space for a lot of people, especially young women, and maybe especially white women, probably, to just kind of have a sense of, I don't know if it's innocence or if it's comfort, or if it's just kind of a sense of like, this is a safe place for me to be a bit of a girl in this atmosphere, right? Which could be a good, nice, happy, moral thing that we could all be pleased with, but it doesn't translate to great art or great music. She's peculiar. She is, I think, in some ways, the pop star for our time. She embodies a kind of aspiration that we have placed on the shoulders of these pop stars. I don't think young girls watching Madonna were thinking that Madonna represents the kind of self-actualization that I can't have in my everyday life. I think she was exciting and empowering and all those things. And she certainly scared the FTC and the all the powers that be, the Catholic Church, But then she matured and she became an artist. I think her best stuff is in the 90s. I really think that like Madonna's a couple of those Madonna albums in the 90s are consistent.
Music is that 2000? Is music?
Yes, it's got to be 2000 where she does
maybe
the
99. Ray of Light.
Ray of Light is 98, I think.
Okay, 98.
And that's a really good record. Yeah,
it's a good record. But I loved music.
Music's pretty good too.
But no, you're right. I think the more introspective, like Say Goodbye, those songs that I'm sure you pull your lighter out when you go see Madonna live.
But I think these confessional songwriters and pop stars, throughout most of the late 20th century, even the most personal observations were generally framed in very universal ways. Exceptions would be, Joni Mitchell's an exception to that. She's writing about very, very personal things. And it's a very private kind of music. Taylor Swift has somehow managed to make very, like, increasingly autobiographical confession that is not universal necessarily. It's her diary. It's her feelings, her squabbles, her rivalries, her lovers. She's managed to make that not private music, very public music for other people to hang their feelings and their aspirations on. And I that's one of the things I talked about in this piece. I think part of what Poptimism turned into was a form of pop star that was meant to be an avatar of self-actualization. Adele was like that. Lady Gaga is a prime example. She represents I don't know, she turns herself into this like avatar of empowerment for people, especially the queer community. Like that's really what she was going. The Little Monsters are like very much her fandom is based on that whole sense. And I think Beyonce does it with a much more political angle. She's saying, I'm going to be an avatar for the racial progress that we are attempting to make and are not yet making throughout the 2010s, the new social justice movement. She's, whether or not we think that's kind of canny and calculated, she succeeded in becoming an avatar of that for a lot of people.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. And I think that model is the one that is dying out. I don't see that when I look at Sabrina Carpenter or Olivia Rodrigo or even Billie Eilish or some of these other younger pop stars. I see that they can be figures that large audiences of young people can kind of place their own feelings on and their own aspirations and their desires to self-actualize this way. But I also see each of these younger pop stars saying, no, it's not me. That's not what I'm doing. I want to make music. I'm here. They understand the pop game. They understand pop culture. They model themselves deliberately after older stars. Sabrina Carpenter, obviously modeling herself after like a kind of a Madonna figure at this moment. Olivia Rodrigo gets her start because of Taylor Swift. Like really the boost comes from touring with Taylor Swift. A lot of these younger women, pop stars especially, are doing this. But I think I think of Chappell Roan, who, again, Springfield, she's from my territory in Missouri. My high school band competed with her high school band. They beat us every time at the competitions. We were small. But she's kind of made some of her audience upset, and she's made some internet commentators upset because she'll just say, I don't want to be somebody's figure. I don't want you projecting all this stuff on me. I want to entertain. I want to make music. And yes, part of the point is to empower. Part of the point is to be this like kind of liberal focus of a culture of inclusivity and all these good, happy, warm feelings that people still want to have. But the focus is a little less on that pop star as figure of mass self-actualization. I think that's happening. I think that's waning.
So you think we're in the death of the rock god? And I'll put pop star in there with rock god.
I don't know. Are there rock gods still? Is that a thing?
No. Once blowing a person that was famous, you can still blow a person that's famous, but you blew that person that was famous, and then you went and just maybe told your friends that you blew a famous person. Now, if you blow a famous person, it's a scandal, and you have to do a book, or you have to have a podcast about you blowing a famous person. I actually watched, because I have a horrible algorithm, Sam. Horrible.
They're all horrible.
Mine is particularly trash. A woman who I guess was a porn actress talk about all the rappers that she was with, and then I found out that it's kind of its own category of quote unquote podcast of people that just talk about the famous people they're with. I don't think you get that in the days of the rock god, where you could. I think those people were really
there were tell-all memoirs, and there were magazine spreads.
It took them years to get their tell-alls out. True. And when you read them, you're kind of blown away. You're like, you were doing this at 14? That's really
oh
sad.
God. Oh yeah.
Where these women are like, no, I want to do this because there's a business aspect to this blowjob. And
that's very popular.
I think once the business aspect of the blowjob came into play, that's maybe the rock god dies a little bit.
Hey, there you go. I mean, this would be the old rock lover attitude to poptimism. It would be to say, look at this. They don't even believe in selling out anymore.
Yeah.
They just think that the whole point is get your bag. You're supposed to get the money. You're supposed to sell out because life is short. It's all just money. It's all, the art question sounds snobby. It sounds elitist. It sounds like, oh, we're really going to talk about art here. We're going to talk about making something that lasts. My generation, millennials, I'm like the baby end of the millennials. I think we buried the idea of selling out. It never occurred to us.
I agree. And
I
think
miss that feeling, because I don't think you can have subcultures and like an actual like emerging new phenomenon in music without groups of people getting together and going, well, no, we are a bit elitist. We are going to guard the thing that we think is special, and we're going to work on that and develop that and do something new. But now that's cringe, or it's just elitist. It's which another thing I mentioned in the conveniently ignored throughout much of the discourse of poptimism has been like some of the most entrenched elitist avant-garde movements have been LGBTQ, have been Black avant-garde artists, or like we're very zealously guarding the edge of their subculture, going, we can't let this be used for profit. We can't let this be something less than artistic. We have to really be careful. Some of that spirit still exists, obviously, but it's harder and harder. And on the internet, it's incredibly hard to do that, to kind of like say, no, we're going to gatekeep. We're going to do something that makes us appear as though we're full of ourselves, not participating in the great mess of the supposedly democratic social media world. If that makes sense.
Can people exist outside of the internet is my bigger question. Like,
yeah, that's a huge question.
When we think about subcultures, for example, when we think about, let's just go back to punk rock. If you think about punk rock, and this is a question that I've been asking because I don't have the answer. It's this subculture that's born out of kind of necessity, because people are making this music that's just basic rock and roll, sped up to 11, and there's nowhere for them to play it. A lot of them are art students, so they're not very good at it. And then within that, you have people that are doing some interesting things.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about the first kind of wave of punk music that's coming out of the US before it goes to the UK and comes back as something a little different.
Right.
Groups like the Talking Heads,
and Patti
television.
Television.
Yeah, Patti Smith, where
that was like art rock. It was
we'll call it
experimental,
But in the day, that was punk. They played at the same clubs.
True. CBGB.
Right? Max's Kansas City and CBGB.
Exactly.
So the Misfits and Blondie can be on the same bill.
Yeah.
So you can really grow a scene, and the only people documenting it are kind of also aspiring art people. You can say the same thing for like early skateboard culture as well.
Sure.
Like who's Santa really Monica around to document this, but just a couple of dudes that have cameras and like taking pictures in Southern California. And you really can grow a culture, because what I said in the beginning, I think it means a lot, where you can just suck. you gotta have a place where you can just figure it out.
A space for amateurs, right? Yes. Like that has to exist.
Yes. If you don't have that, then you get what you have today, which is a lot of digital perfection, non-sonically dynamic music, because I don't think people really want to deal with dynamics in their music. There's a formula to everything.
Quite literally in the production, right? Like,
oh god,
the dynamic range has just slowly flattened down.
But who are you comparing yourself to? If you're comparing yourself to Taylor Swift and you're an aspiring artist, and you're not comparing yourself to artist X that you saw at the local venue,
right?
Then you're constantly going to try to sound like whatever's hot instead of, whatever you saw rock the club the night before. And rocking the club, you didn't have your phone out. You were just kind of being part of the experience of it all. And I guess my question is, and I still see, I live in Mexico, and I still get to see young people just do stuff randomly, figure it out. They have a
Yeah.
space to do stuff.
Yeah.
Police aren't getting involved. Rents aren't high, so you can do stuff for free that isn't just like backyard shows, and that's really important. Like, what kind of access do people have to instruments, to recording equipment? You know, you're younger than me by quite a few years. I'm 48. So did you grow up with the ability to be able to say, Mom, Dad, I think I want to play the drums, and they could get you a drum set? Or was that something that you had to like
I was uniquely I'm a bit weird. Both my parents were musicians.
Okay.
And so my dad's a retired Presbyterian minister, but both of them had been like classically trained vocalists and could play some other instruments as well. So I was kind of expected to play music from a very young age. I was actually really snobby. I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I would go around telling my fellow third graders, like, oh, only classical music is real music. Eminem and Britney Spears, that's not music. I was horrible. But I was not popular for good reason. No, I mean, I just had like, on the one hand, when we moved to small town Missouri, like I just had a lot of time on my hands, man. I didn't have a smartphone until I was like 17 or 18. I had a lot of time on my hands to just sit around and learn how to play instruments and write songs. And I had music lessons from the time I was taking violin lessons from the time I was 5 years old. And then I switched to guitar. I played trumpet and marching band, did a bunch of things. That was my life, was that I was constantly learning, okay, how am I going to express myself somehow through writing songs or learning new instruments. And then the internet came around, the home computer, one family computer in the basement, initially with that dial-up internet that you couldn't be on the phone at the same time that you were on the internet. I remember that. I caught that part of the early internet culture, basically before Web 2.0 before social media became the way people dealt with the internet, or like the main way that people were existing on the internet. For me, the internet was amazing. It was like this enormous, it was the best library. It was an archive, right? It was just, now I could start going through these lists. I could find all the special edition Rolling Stone best guitarists, best music videos of all time, best albums of all time. And I could just go pour through and find them. I didn't have to go to a record store. We didn't have a CD store even, in our town. So the internet was it. It was where I was finding all this stuff. And so I was just obsessive. I was going through and trying to listen to everything I possibly could. And it was only when I got off to like college that I started playing more in bands and meeting other people. And at that point, I started college in 2012. There was sort of a promise of an internet-based subculture of really interesting indie music, mostly coming through, Pitchfork reviews and the people who cared about Pitchfork reviews, which was a lot of me and my friends. Some of those artists that I think about that were just starting to be really cool at the time are now like pretty well known. Zoomers would know them from TikTok, Tame Impala, Mac DeMarco, Grimes. There was a sense that like people were starting to figure out how to use the internet to do the old subcultural thing that used to happen in the real world. It didn't work. I don't think it worked because the internet is just too big. It's too strange. And this POPTIMISM thing didn't help. The attitude online very much became, okay, the new progressive focus on identity more than anything is synonymous with music and expression, and this idea of like delineating, saying, okay, well, we're going to argue about whether something sucks or not, kind of started to become passé. So I think, I don't know, what was your original question? It was like, what was my experience as a millennial or something?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I had to compensate. I used the internet to compensate for not really having people around that I could talk to about those things, or that I didn't have record stores that I could go to. I didn't have these social experiences that I found out later were like the formulating moments for Gen X or boomer people, that they could gather around these like watering holes of culture, amateur all the way up to, you know, the higher echelons of professional musicians. And then I moved off to St. Louis after school and was part of the kind of DIY basement punk scene there. And it also felt like there was going to be sort of, it was heading towards merging with a broader Midwest DIY thing. And some of the bands that I knew were getting signed on tiny boutique New York indie labels, and some of those bands seemed to be able to kind of get a little bit bigger, but COVID knocked it out. It was totally decimated. Half of the house, like venues, like houses that had really become popular venues, just couldn't do it anymore. The smaller, tiny venues with a low overhead just couldn't function at that point. And St. Louis, I don't know, I haven't really been back in a year, but it probably hasn't quite recovered. I had a few friends who were like, we're moving to Philadelphia. Like, it's not happening here. It's not going to happen here. We got to get somewhere bigger where people actually do find themselves in person. Because it's about networking. It's always been about knowing people.
It is, which is why there's certain cities I've never really dug, right? Like LA and New York.
Sure.
Because that's a different kind of networking. That's a value. It's a value judgment. It's like, who are you on the ladder of importance? Okay, I'll talk to you.
Yeah, people figure it out quick. They're merciless.
They figure it that's how you're introduced. This is Sam. He's a journalist. You might know him from his bylines and Unheard. If you haven't been introduced like that by anybody, then you're in a good crew of people.
Yeah. No, I definitely have been introduced that way in the London literary scene, which is trying to do its own thing.
There you go.
Trying to. There's like literary parties that have been springing up here, and you can read about them. They've been written about. Some of these.
They've been written about. Your literary parties have been written about them.
That's what they're good at doing, the promotional part.
Well, that's the magic of like writing about this stuff. Some friends of ours were at a show. There was a big anniversary show for this band from the Bay where I'm from called Neurosis, and they were having like a 25th anniversary thing, and we were all hanging out and talking, and someone was talking about some noise show, and then and my ears kind of turned off after that. And then someone said, what did they say? They said, yeah, I was at that show and there was like 10 people there, but 100 people wrote about it.
yeah, man. Yeah, that's funny.
And that's what everybody wants. I think, you want to be the person that everybody writes about, and then hopefully people show up to your gig.
Yeah, and we probably romanticize a lot. We probably what's the old quote about the Velvet Underground? It's like not very many people heard them, but everybody who heard them started their own band. There probably were some Velvet Underground shows where there were 10 people in the audience.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, Jonathan Richman talks about this. Modern Lovers. He talks about going to some of those shows in New York and just the birth of a subculture is a strange thing. It's so difficult to pinpoint when it starts, when it gets co-opted. Can we still make them? Maybe it's only 10 people. I think one of the side effects, I'm going to get a little prophetic here. I think one of the side effects of what they call the dark forest theory of the internet, the idea that it's slowly becoming more and more just machine generated. Most of the actual padding content of the internet, the profiles, everything is increasingly just AI generated. Some people think that Instagram is going to be 99% AI generated by next year. I think one of the big side effects of that might be just forcing people's hands. That they're going to have to go and be around people more often if they want to even encounter something that proof positive, they can see with their own eyes and know it's real. People are still going to use social media to communicate these things. I wouldn't know about London literary readings without Instagram, as much as I hate it. But maybe those will become the poster boards rather than the actual site of discourse. And people will start to gather. I don't know, in a place like London or New York, this isn't an original observation, but it's so expensive. You can't be Fran Lebowitz in 1980 New York, driving a cab part-time, paying for a studio, having the time to write full-time on the side. I don't know what it's like in Mexico. I'm sure are you in Mexico City?
No, I'm actually in Baja. So I'm in northern.
Okay, cool.
Northern Mexico.
So I imagine it's not as expensive, right? If you have subcultures around, it's like we were describing. You have kids can get together, pool their resources, and afford to rent that warehouse for a weekend. You know,
the difference here is that you don't have to rent anything; you can just do it. That's the difference. The difference here is that it's more maybe it more resembles maybe the States in the 80s, and 70s and 90s to the extent that the police aren't going to mess with you if you're making noise in a vacant building. And you might have it like there's a man here that has a cafe, and the cafe that he has was adjacent to a movie theater. And he's a director. He's an award-winning director from Mexico. So he bought the theater and shows movies there for free. Behind the theater and the cafe is a massive amphitheater, and he just lets kids throw shows there.
That's awesome.
It's free. Sometimes you'll show movies in the amphitheater. It's an environment of creativity and nurturing a culture. There's a guy down the road from me that there's like these little secret surf spots. I live by the ocean. And as you can imagine, surf spots are kind of sacred. They're tourist free. But this gentleman, and I met him through a person that I met at this cafe with the amphitheater. He built a cafe by the surf spot, and then him and his buddies, patrons of the cafe that like to surf, they also like to skate, built a little bitty ramp, a little bowl. And from the bowl, now they built a big ass half pipe. So they have shows there. Birthday parties are there. It's the last time I was there, we helped this 6-year-old kid drop in for the first time. If you know anything about skating, dropped in.
No, but I can picture it. Yeah.
Oh man, it was like this. He was trying and falling, like literally all day. And finally, a couple of OGs helped him get down, and he did it. And it's this. These are the types of environments that people need.
Yeah, man.
If you want to really nurture any sort of counter to where we are now. And in the US, and even I guess in the Western context, it's just too hard to do, because you're going to come across things like rent and
gentrification, pricing everybody out. Yeah.
So if you have these spaces, then they're probably very dangerous. Like, as much as it sounds beautiful what I'm talking about, I also live in a place where building code regulations are very lenient.
Yeah. It was like that in St. Louis, the first few years that I was there. You could get some really into some cheap places, but it might not be the best.
Yeah. And the ghost ship fire in Oakland, California, we talked about this a few shows ago, that is one of those things that you have to think about when if you're doing anything that countercultural, you're probably on the fringes of society somewhere. And in the Bay where I'm from, because there are these homeless encampments that are kind of in these industrial areas where there's just not people around other than homeless people.
Sure.
you can throw pretty big parties over there, and the cops are probably not going to mess with you.
Yeah.
But you are throwing a party in the backyard of these people that are just trying to live there, and like not everybody wants to hear whatever the fuck you're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Oh man. I don't know how the subculture thing gets started in the metropolises again. I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's possible. I hope it is. I think people want it. I think people always want it. They want to live the kind of bohemia that they've heard about. But whether that's real or not, or whether it means being in an area or in a space where there's going to be some risk involved, that might be what it takes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, someone says you live in your van. Yeah,
live in your van. I mean, plenty of people did it that way.
Yeah.
That was Camilla. Camilla, Camilla from Substack.
Oh, okay. Shout out to Camilla.
Shout out Camilla.
But I guess in the end, before I let you go, are we going to get biting music journalism again? Or is that too hard to do?
I don't know, man.
When we don't have specific, like, as much as I appreciate Anthony Fantano for reviewing all the things that he reviews, sometimes I'm like, damn, dude, just I would appreciate if you just picked one genre.
It's perfectly yeah, I get that. He's perfectly smart, but it's just adjectives, man. He's not interested in the actual, I think, the meaning or the form or the structure of what's going on. He's not interested in placing it in a deeper context all the time. Yeah. He just kind of wants to describe it.
Yeah.
It's booming and cavernous and glitchy and like all that stuff. And I that is the kind of verbiage that critics have to get past. They have to get interested again in, well, what is this actually doing? What is it saying? What's the point? Why is this song? Why did this artist choose hip hop? Is it just a cultural thing, or does it do something specific? You know, why did this person form a punk band? Why are they making 3 short little songs with simple chords and a certain way of shouting over the riffs? Why did they do that? Well, they did it for a reason. It carries a context. Some of that is historical, some of that is genre, some of that is immediate. Now, that person thinks it's important to keep doing that. Well, what is that communicating? There's a metaphysic to it. There's a meaning to it that's deeper. And you have to be able to, I think, as a critic, understand all those things and understand all the contingencies that go into it. Understand that if an artist made something, there were 1,000 decisions that were made in the course of making that thing. And you got to re-engineer those the best you can based on whatever you have. And at that point, you can begin to communicate to an audience. This is what makes this good. This is what makes this a failure. What's the difference? It could be tiny. And it is based somewhat on taste, but you have to make the argument. And once people start to get over themselves a bit and start going, yeah, you know what? I'll learn enough about something that I can talk about it in a way that isn't just describing it to people. People don't want to hear what the music is like. They want to hear what it's about. They want to hear what it is actually trying to get across. The form it took means as much as anything. And that's what any critic has to get into. I think if people get more comfortable with that and you start to get like little oases of serious criticism, which always takes more knowledge than people think it does, and a little comfort with being a snob, take it seriously. I've been called a snob a lot of times, and it was always by people who didn't listen to as much music as me. What seemed like snobbery, it probably is, but it was because it was serious. I was saying, no, I care about this thing. And I care about whether it's good or bad, because enough bad music in the world can really fuck with an audience. They really,
where we are now.
They really people stop having a sense that they can decide, yes, I like this. No, I don't like that. They become more and more content with just taking whatever the algorithm shows them, whatever the basic level, programming shows them. But some good criticism, some people who stand by their takes, saying, oh, I think this thing that's really popular is actually kind of bad and it might be bad for people to listen to. Not that it's bad. Not that it's bad. It's not immoral, unethical necessarily, but it's maybe it's mediocre and you should listen to something else instead because it elevates you to listen to something better. It enriches your life.
It really does.
And we can talk about these things. We can argue about these things. And if we do that for a little while, then the audience comes around a bit and they start to go, oh, wait, I can take my taste into my own hands. I can get curious. I can pursue something that's interesting to me instead of letting it simply roll over me. Letting the people who already have a lot of power and money and reasons to really only share the most popular, successful music with me. I can start to move past that and I can go, well, wait a minute. The internet is right there. And it is the biggest archive, the biggest engine for discovery of culture that anybody will ever create, that any of us will ever, it's amazing. It's right there. All it requires is people just remembering that they can be curious. And good criticism does that. I really think that.
I feel like curiosity is one of those things. Like there's a fella that I'm friends with, and he is your age. He's 32, and he'll ask me about bands, and not too much because he has his own musical taste, which are a little different than mine. But when he wants to, he goes, I heard you talk about Def Leppard. So I went and listened to all the Def Leppard albums.
Some people do that.
And I found that fascinating because I could never do, as a young person, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If the first fucking Def Leppard I heard was Photograph, that's the Def Leppard I know.
Yeah.
Maybe I saved enough money to buy it, but it was on constant rotation, that Pyromania and Hysteria record. And it wasn't until I had something like Spotify that I could go back and go, oh, let me listen to On Through the Night and High and Dry. And if I ever listen to Def Leppard, which is probably a little bit more than people would know, it's those first two records because they're so good, right? It's they're trying to be Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, and they're not working with Mutt Lange yet, so it's a different sound. But to know that there's people that go and actually listen to every discography, or I'll get someone that ask me in a comment section. And these are my favorite comments. Where do I start with band X? You mentioned this on the show. Where should I go listen to something first? Like, and you have the ability to do that now in a way you didn't have before. Before it was like, can you make me a tape of? Can you burn me?
Yeah. That's how I got into some shit. But that's how my whole sense of what was cool or what wasn't. It did start with those mix CDs and mixtapes. But I also want to say something else before we wrap up. We've had this whole conversation. We've talked about all these things that seem like they're just like impenetrable problems. But even though I do have, some sort of like snobbish feelings about pop as it has been for the last 20 years or so, we are in a period that it's not like we don't have brilliant artists everywhere. It's not like we don't have extraordinary music just everywhere. There's so much of it. This year alone, I feel like I've had the time. Finally, I've sat down and I've just been like trying to keep up with a lot of stuff that's going on. I've listened to 60 records this year that I thought were good to great. Really fresh, new, exciting things. It's not always trailblazing or visionary, but there are songwriters. There are people who are the equal of a lot of the best music from those times that we romanticize. It's just that there's no mechanism in the way that, say, 120 Minutes was, in the 80s and 90s for getting it in front of people. A lot of kids sat down in front of the TV not knowing what was coming on, and boom, there's Nana Cherry, or there's
it's the first time I saw
trip hop artists. There's Massive Attack.
That was the first
There's
time I saw.
Portishead. I was never gonna hear about them because I live in the Midwest. But whatever, it's on the TV. We don't have a mechanism the same way because the internet is too diffused and algorithmatized. We don't yet have a mechanism for getting these extraordinary young or interesting artists to people, to mass numbers of people. That's the next big thing. If somebody can figure out a way to bring back something like 120 minutes on MTV or make a place where it's like, yeah, somebody's curating and selecting and getting across to larger groups of people some of this stuff that's just buried, you know.
There's
I
no
think of some artists,
monoculture.
you know, there is no monoculture. That's true. But there was a time when there wasn't a monoculture. The monoculture was a creation, right? That was invented by broadcast technologies in the 20th century. We're probably post that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time before it, before everybody knew the same, you know, kind of cultural references. And people still were making really cool stuff. So I don't know. I'm not going to solve any problems here today. We're not going to solve any problems here today. But you know, we're not in a drought of culture. It's just diffuse. It's scattered all over the place, and it's hard for people to find it.
It's very hard for people to find it. It's very hard for people to find it, and even with movies, it's the same way for me.
Yeah.
You know, everything is hard to find, but I think that's the beauty, is looking sometimes as well.
Yeah.
I was in a record store. No, I'm sorry, I take it back. I was in a like Hot Topic type store here in Mexico, and they sell like band and horror movie shirts, and pretty affordably. So it's just a cool place.
Yeah.
And
be confusing if you're looking for My Bloody Valentine merch.
You can get. They actually have
horror movie or band. Which one? Tell me.
If you were they literally have a new shirt up on the wall, and it's My Bloody Valentine. I was like, oh, that's an interesting shirt to have on the wall. Any band that you want from the 80s, 90s, some of the 70s, they have of any crazy genre.
Come down to Baja, man.
You will lose your mind if you go in the store. And they also have mugs as well, because this is my Susie and the Banshees mug. But they had this stack of records that a lot of stores do here in Mexico. It's old records.
Yeah.
And I saw a cover of an album that just looked really cool and interesting. And so then I looked up the band on Spotify. I don't have a fucking record player. Fuck what I do with that for.
Yeah.
And I found the band. I heard 3 minutes of a song, and I put it on a playlist. And I was playing that playlist before we started the show in my house, and that song came on, and it was such a moving piece of music that it moved me to tears. It could be my 48 years on life.
Yeah.
That causes me to get emotional to a song.
It could have been the Bare Naked Ladies, and he's still getting
right? It's like, only 1 week. 1 week.
No, but I bet it was hitting something deep.
Oh man, it was a beautifully. It's from the late 70s. Maybe you would call it quote unquote yacht rock or album oriented rock, but it was more on the soulful R&B end. Beautiful vocals. A dynamic range that takes you from here to here by the end of the song.
It's that late 70s studio magic, man.
Oh man, and you're just feeling every emotion. And the song is it's a really uplifting song. I'm getting fucking misty thinking about it. And I found it in a record store.
Yeah.
Randomly in a record store. There was a cover that looked interesting to me. I looked up the music, and now I can listen to it. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have found it if I was. This group is so small that if I made a playlist of nothing but Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers, they would have never came up on it. randomly. I wouldn't have found it in a search. I kind of had to find it the way that I found it. And there is a sort of magic if you have the ability to go to a garage sale, go to a flea market, and thumb through these records that you can get a handful for a couple of bucks.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's going to be some gems in there.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, there's going to be some. Find the one with the stupidest album cover. There's going to be some gems in there.
Yeah, and there's going to be 5 copies of Whipped Cream by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, because there's always
there was actually when I went to another record
there.
store. Yeah, there was actually
always there.
But yeah,
that's cool, man. That's really
if
cool.
you have that ability to leave your house and just
I
feel like wherever you live, there's got to be a garage sale or a flea market. You don't have to live in
and I think Zoomers, like young Zoomers in Alpha, I think they're like, I don't know, I got this when I was teaching. They're like acutely aware of the world that they live in. They're acutely aware of the technology and the havoc that is wreaking with their attention spans and their sense of physical media. And a lot of them want that. They crave. They like really romanticize physical media. I mean, Taylor Swift's record broke some records for vinyl record sales.
She actually put out physical media. I know that.
Yeah.
And people were complaining about the way physical media is put out as kind of this massive cash grab. And I'm like, have you been in a room with artists and their label where artists are like, no one's buying the records, so we got to throw a T-shirt in there.
Yeah.
Willy Wonka's magic ticket.
Yeah. Era's front row seats.
Right? You got to. If you don't throw
every 1 in 100 records,
if you don't do, like, baseball cards were the same way. Like, this is a little bit of a real game used ball on this baseball. Albums are the same way for people to buy, because there's no reason for anyone to buy the record unless you physically went to the concert and you want a memento that isn't a T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's really what a record is.
I mean, we got people collecting hundreds of Funko Pops. People like this stuff, you know. They'll pay for the lamest plastic shit. Why not some good music? Why not some like an actual, like, think of like I don't know if you do movies, Criterion Collection. People love that stuff because it's curated, it's beautifully packaged. You get the feeling of like, yeah, I have this. If the internet ever goes out in my house, I could still watch that movie. I could still listen to that record.
Of physical media, though, owning it and knowing that if the internet ever goes off, I'm jealous of those people. I'm definitely jealous, because no, we don't talk about those movies, but we do have a show where we talk about B movies.
That's great.
So that's one of the things I like to talk about. Look, Sam, I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to thank you once again.
It's been fun
for taking the time to talk to me. It has been a pleasure. Also refreshing to talk to another young person that gives me so much more hope. Considering that I discovered you online, I'm like, oh God, I hate the internet.
Yeah, no, I do too. It's the soup we swim in.
What are you working on next, brother?
Oh man. Well, I write for Unheard pretty consistently. I have my own Substack that's called Vita Contemplativa. It's got about 1,000 subscribers or so. I post on it sometimes, trying to do that a little bit more often. I work as a film critic for a Substack called the Metropolitan Review, which is going to be a physical magazine pretty soon. And I work as a poetry editor for the Hinternet, which is another very peculiar site. And then, I don't know, man. I'm working as a writer in London. I just wrapped up my master's. I make music. Can go on Spotify, Apple, anywhere, and look up the band Other Sons. And that's all me. That's SUNS, not SONS. Other Sons, that's all me. Been doing that for a while, so I'm going to be putting out a new album sometime early next year, probably. And in the meantime, if I can manage it, just get into this London literary scene. Publish a novel, maybe. I don't I'm living that bohemia of the mind.
We got to
Yeah.
hook you up with our buddy out there that's around your age,
Yeah, please
Ralph
do.
Leonard, who also writes for Unheard.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. Might even share an editor with him.
You probably do. I wouldn't be surprised. But Ralph's great. He's coming on the show next Saturday to talk
Cool.
about a movie. I can't remember the movie off the top of my head.
Yeah, you guys have some cool people on here. I saw Cinderella was on here.
Yeah, Cinderella was on. Yeah.
That's cool. I've seen Catherine Liu on here before.
It's the homegirl.
Yeah, she's so cool.
Yeah, no, I try.
You're doing great, man. It's awesome.
I try. So now we have you on here. Now you are a TIR personality as well.
Yeah.
So I want to have you back. We're going to have more. Now that I know you do movie reviews as well, going to have you and Ralph on to do some
anytime,
movie reviews.
anytime, man. I'd be happy to.
But thank you so much, Sam. Have a good rest of your day. Appreciate you.
Wherever
you guys are watching or listening to the show, there's links in the description to read Sam's article, The Last Days of Poptimism. Before I even talk about the show, boom, there should be a link to Sam's article. I made sure I put that in there. Wonderful young man. Dre is asking, when's the next movie night? Because of this conversation, the next movie night is going to be Tuesday. I'm doing an early show Tuesday where I will be streaming at 4 a.m. my time, where we're going to be talking about the limits of family abolition. And we'll have a movie night in the evening when we usually run the show, and we'll watch At Close Range. I think that's what we should watch. I think you guys need to see it so we can sing that Madonna song, "Live to Tell." Oh, such a good song. But I'm wearing my Susie and the Banshees sweatshirt, so everybody go listen to Susie and the Banshees songs. The old stuff, the newer stuff from the 90s, doesn't matter. You can't go wrong with Susie Sue. Jason, do I know the words? Nope. Not at all. Am I going to sing it? Nope. I don't know the words. I could do it like I do Wilson Phillips, but then you guys will make fun of me. But no, I don't know the words. So it says 4 a.m. Are we going to get Negro? What do you want, Chase? No. I had to prepare for this very early morning. I'm not going to do the same. I'm not going to hang out with you guys until midnight the night before watching 5 movies and then be so delirious that I set the wrong alarm. I'm not going to do that. Don't worry about it. You're going to get regular, professional Jason. And then we have to watch one of these black and white movies. I keep watching all these old movies. So we'll do that as well. So thank you guys for hanging out on this Sunday. Sunday. And I am out. Let's watch some cartoons.